Hi, Joyce here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a pivot table. Pivot tables are perhaps one of Excel's most powerful features. It's definitely one of my favorite features, and it's used to analyze and summarize databases. If you have a large database, like I do here, I have over 600 records in this database. Pivot tables are an excellent tool to use to quickly make sense of what you have here. It's much easier to create a pivot table and show you what it looks like than to try and actually explain what a pivot table is. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a pivot table. So to create a pivot table, I have to be somewhere within my database. And then I go to the Insert tab, and the very first button is my pivot table. So I'm going to click on that. In this dialog box here, it wants to know where the data is that I want to analyze. Is it in a table or range, which indeed is the case here, or do I want to use an external data source? If I wanted to use an external data source, I would import it into Excel first, so I always use the very first option. Then it wants to know the range of cells containing the database, and Excel has guessed at what that range might be, and it's guessed correctly, as it normally does, so I can carry on. If it had not guessed correctly, I would have to click in this area here and highlight the correct cells myself. However, I don't need to do that because it has guessed correctly. Below, it wants to know where I want to put the pivot table report. Do I want to put it on a new worksheet, which is always the choice I make? Alternatively, I could select to put it on an existing worksheet. If I made that choice, I would have to click in the location and indicate which cell would contain the top left-hand corner of my pivot table. However, I don't need to make any changes in here, so I can just click on OK. So this is where my pivot table is going to appear. And what I like to do is put it on a new worksheet. I like to go down and name the worksheet. So I'm just going to double click and call it Pivot Table. You may understand why I'm doing this shortly. Okay, so my pivot table is going to end up over in this left-hand area once I create it. Over on the right here, I have my pivot table field list, so it's showing me all the fields in my database. Underneath that, I have 4 different areas that I can drag these fields to. So what I want to do is drag the fields to the areas where I want them to appear in the report. So as I mentioned, the report's going to show up over here, and in my report, I have a report header area, which would be up in A1. In row 3, I can put column headings, so I can indicate which field I want to use for my column headings. And then going down the left-hand side here, I can indicate what field I want to use for my row headings. And then in this area here, I indicate where the data is, which field contains the data that I want to analyze. So I simply go over to the right-hand side here and drag the fields where I want them. So I think I will drag salesman down into the row labels. So you just drag it down, let go. Really, really simple. And I think for values, I'm going to use my net sales. So I'm going to drag that down and drop it in values. this is actually all that I need. I now have a pivot report. And you can see how easy that was. And it has quickly summarized by salesperson. I do have 4 different areas that I can use here, but I really only need to use 2 of them. If I wanted to, I could move salesman up into the column labels. It gives my report a completely different look. I'm going to drag it back into the row labels. And I think I will put product, so I'm going to drag it down and I'm going to put that in the column labels. So now what I'm seeing are my subtotals by salesperson and by product. And then the grand total for the salesperson, grand total for each of the products, and then the overall grand total. I'm going to change my mind. I think instead of having the product in the column labels, I'm going to remove it. There's many different ways of moving these fields around. I just like to drag them. So I don't want the product field here. I'm just going to drag it over on my worksheet and I'm going to let go. And now it's removed from my pivot table. I think I will put region in the column labels. So I'm just going to drag it down into column labels and let go. Now I have completely different summary information showing in my pivot table. This is so easy, so powerful. I think I will put products in my report filter. So as I mentioned before, this appears up in A1. So right now I'm seeing my subtotals and totals for all products. I could come up to the drop down button that I have here and I could say I only want to see totals for flooring and click on OK. So now all I'm seeing are my totals for flooring. I could go back up and I can say I want to select multiple items, so I want flooring and tools. And so that's what these figures here encompass. Or I could go back up and I could say I want them all. And now they're all included in here. Very, very easy to create your pivot tables. You just drag the fields where you want them to be. Maybe I don't want salesman in the row labels. Drag that out, drop it on my worksheet. I'm going to move product down into my row labels. Once again, completely change the information. I think I will put region also in the row labels. So I'm going to drag region down. And if you look at my screen, you can see a line. Hopefully you can see a line above product. If I let go, region is going to be the main category and products will be a subcategory. Or I can go down and I can place it under product. So I think I'll drop it under. So you can see I have flooring and then the different regions. I'm going to resequence them. I'm going to drag region up above. So you can see now I have the region and each region is broken down by the different type of product. And I think I will put region back in the column labels. And I'm going to add salesman to the report filter. If I wanted to, I could also remove net sales from the values, and I could put number of customers in there. And now what it's actually doing is a count. So I'm going to move that out, and I'm going to put net sales back. If I wanted to, I could also drag net profit into values. And once again, I could put it above or I could put it below the other field in there. I'm going to remove some of profit and loss. If I want to format the numbers in this area, there's many ways of doing it. I like to right click, and I like to go to value field settings. This is just a personal choice. I could do my number formats up here, but I'm going into value field settings. And I have my number formats down here. I can go in and I can format as currency with no decimal places. Click on OK and click on OK. Just looks a little nicer. I'm going to go back in. I'm going to right click in my values area, and I'm going to go back into value field settings. And in here, I can also change how the calculations are being performed, or what calculation is being performed in the values area. So I could say I want to count, or I want average. Or I could go to show values as, and on the drop down here, I could say I want to show them as a percent of the grand total or a percent of the column total. I'm going to show them as a percent of the grand total, and click on OK. So now I can see flooring for the East, what percent of sales that is of the grand total. Lots of flexibility here. I'm going to right click to go back into value field settings, and I'm going to go back and show value as no calculation, so that I'm just back to summarizing, and click on OK. This figure here, 116,184. If I want to know what records go into that value, all I have to do is double click on it, and it's showing me all the records that are going into that value, and it's put them on another worksheet. I'm actually going to remove this worksheet. I'm going to right click on it and delete. One more feature that I'm going to show you, with the field that you have up in the report filter area, which in this case is salesman, I can create a separate report on a separate tab for each salesman. Or if I put the region in there, I could create a separate report for each region. I'm going to do the salesman. So all that you have to do, you have a couple of contextual tabs here for working with your pivot table. Lots of commands on it. I'm on the options tab. If I go to options, I can show report filter pages. In this dialog box here, it will show me all of the fields that I have in the report filter. I select the one I want to show the filter pages for and click on OK. And now I have a separate pivot table for each salesperson. So that's pivot tables. That's a good introduction to pivot tables. Awesome feature. I love them. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Before I go, I have a free gift for you. You will probably notice that a button has appeared on the screen. I invite you to please click on that button to request a free copy of my very best tips. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.